Hello, fellow degenerates. So, I used to work at a pretty notorious quick lube place known as Spiffy Lane. For the purposes of this video, I'll be referring to it as Spiffy Lane. And lately, I've been seeing a lot of videos concerning the quality of the work done here and the training of the employees. Now, all the views and opinions that I'm about to express are of my own personal views and opinions, and based on my experiences with the company that I had over the course of maybe 2 years. This really only applies to Southern California because it's really the only place I worked. I can't really say for across the country or even up north. I know they operate a little differently over there. So this is just from the perspective of Southern California. Now, with that being said, I've been seeing a lot of videos like this.
You valve line, oil change, motherfuckers. What is wrong with you guys? Look. God damn. Like, why you guys tighten them?
And they usually follow the same narrative of, holy shit, this filter's on so tight. Did they tighten this on with the hand of God? And usually they think of power tools, which is not the case for all the ones that I worked at, which is quite a few of them. For a majority of the time, we weren't even allowed to use power tools down under the car, even on skid plates, which eventually we did get power tools for, and I know some of them did and some of them didn't. I think eventually all of them adopted power tools just for the skid plates, but we're absolutely under no circumstances allowed to use the power tools on drain plugs or oil filters. Now with that out of the way, there was one thing we were forced to use. Now I'm sure everyone knows what this is, but if not, this is a filter band wrench. You put it over the filter, you torque it down like that, and helps you get the filter off. Pretty neat. Now, like I said, we were forced to use these on every single filter that we put on. Whether it be a fuel filter or a oil filter, we had to wrench them on with these. Unless it was a canister filter, then in that case we'd use a torque wrench. You just set to a pretty low torque spec or whatever the manufacturer recommended. But for the most part, most spin-on filters were put on with these. And like I said, we had to follow a procedure, and that procedure states that we had to use these, which is unfortunate. Now, of course, that leads to a lot of situations like the video we just saw, where the filter is on with the might of God. And it kind of sucks, but it does make the process dummy-proof. Now, personally, me, I would never be caught using a band wrench on my Honda Fit that has a small spin-on filter that doesn't need to be tightened more than hand tight. And for many of the shops, this is law. Not a lot of them use band wrenches. I mean, for people who aren't already mechanic watching this video. But yeah, it's not a industry standard. Like I said, hand tight usually suffices enough, but we have to use that band wrench, which leads to a lot of the videos. Like I said, it is a forced process, which leads to a more systemic problem of these quick lube places, more specifically Spiffy Lane. So a lot of the time I see people ragging on these places, it's usually because of the lack of knowledge these technicians seem to have, whether it be the filters or whether it be them recommending something their car doesn't necessarily have or whatever it may be. They seem to be unknowledgeable sometimes. Not the case for all of them. I know plenty of people who work there and had their CTE certification or were master tech somewhere else or whatever. Not master techs, but you know what I mean. They have experience. But for a majority of the time, to get hired on, you don't need any experience at all. Some places even prefer you have no experience so that they can train you in the ways of the valve lane. Now, this leads to some sticky situations, especially because the majority of the time, the management is too busy trying to find staff for a shift that only has 2 people on it and it's supposed to have 7. Either way, a lot of the times these trainees don't get the training that they necessarily need. And like I said, it's not for all of the locations, it's just for the ones that I definitely worked at. It was definitely a lackluster training environment, and it should be a little bit better. One thing they do train you on, though, is sales. Once you get past the base grunt level work of cleaning and doing just the oil changes, you get to be cashier as a little treat. And part of this is knowing the prompts for every single service that we have. Yes, every service that they offered had a prompt for it. that we had to say every single time someone came in for an oil change. And these were based off of Carfax, which I think sometimes worked, most of the time didn't. Usually it'd only be other spiffy lanes that we get the information from. And even then it was so-and-so at best. Maybe it was the right information, maybe it wasn't. But that's how you get to a lot of situations of people going, hey, I just got my tire rotation. Why are you recommending me another tire rotation? It's just because the system prompts them to say so. And that leads to a lot of other situations like this.
These mother truckers trying to sell
So it's rear
fake
diff
service,
fluid for the
Valvoline.
front wheel drive car.
This is a front wheel drive?
Yeah,
Oh, it is?
it's a Nissan Altima.
Now, what I'm thinking is probably somebody didn't put that it was front wheel drive on the actual car listing. Every time a car comes in, you scan it in. It has a option for what kind of car it is. Usually it autofills, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes if you leave it blank, it will recommend every single service available, including diesel fuel filters, which is some pretty funny customer moments. But what I'm guessing is they saw that prompt. They said it like they should, like they're trained to do. And this guy all of a sudden is like, what the hell? Why is he recommending a rear differential on my clearly front-wheel drive Nissan Altima? Now, most of the time, every single time this has occurred and I've worked, it's usually squashed pretty quickly because the bottom side goes to do a differential, a front-wheel drive car, and sees no rear differential. And worst comes to worst, the cashier looks like an idiot, which happens more times than not, unfortunately. And like I said, it's really not the technician's fault. They just don't know. They're not trained. They're not certified. It's just a roll of the dice whenever you go into these kinds of places. Again, from my experience working at these places. Now, ideally, more training would be implemented, but that would probably mean they'd have to pay them more, which isn't necessarily above minimum wage. Now, you could think they get commissions on these or some sort of sales incentive. No, nothing at all. They had no commissions or a sales cut or nothing like that. We're really just forced to say these things, which leaves a lot of people not caring, which again leads to more situations like beforehand where, the tech just said whatever was on the screen, which is what we're taught to do. To wrap everything up, please just take it easy on your local Spiffy Lane or Spiffy Lube or any sort of quick lube place. And honestly, if you don't trust these places or if you don't want to go to these places, you don't have to. So go support your local mechanic, or even better yet, do it yourself. Save a couple bucks. It maybe takes 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes of your day to go out there and do your oil change. Save a couple bucks. Unless you have a European car. Those are just pain and suffering, for the most part. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to do a diesel fuel filter on my rear-wheel drive Prius.